Bigelow, Bloom, Bonilla, Bonta, Bro, Brown, Burke, Calderon, Campos, Chang, Chow, Chavez, David Chu, Canton Chu, Cooley, Cooper, Dababne, Daly, Daly, Dodd, Eggman, Frazier, Gaines, Gallagher, Christina Garcia, Eduardo Garcia, Gatto, Gibson, Gomez, Gonzalez, Gordon, Gray, Grove, Hadley, Harper, Hernandez, Holden, Irwin, Jones, Joan Sawyer, Kim, Lackey, Levine, Linder, Lopez, Lowe, Mainshine, Mathis, Mays, McCarty, Medina, Melendez, Mullen, Nazarian, Obernolte, O'Donnell, Olson, Patterson, Perea, Quirk, Rendon, Ridley Thomas, Rodriguez, Salas, Santiago, Steinorth, Stone, Thurmond, Ting, Wagner, Waldron, Weber, Wilk, Williams, Wood. Madam Speaker.
A quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. The day's prayer will be offered by our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos. Father Papadimos.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, you speak to us in a still, small voice, and we learn to hear your voice little by little. It may be a feeling at night to turn off the TV and go to bed, or at the mall being uneasy about making a certain purchase. Help us to pay attention to what we're feeling, not to ignore our own impressions or inclinations, because when you speak, Lord, it's usually very subtle. Thank you for leading and guiding us and for giving us time to get quiet and listen to you. Amen.
Thank you, Father. We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Bonilla as she leads us in the pledge. Ms. Bonilla.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Monday, January 26, 2015. The Assembly met at 12 noon. Honorable Kevin Mullen, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson at the desk. Kathleen Lewis reading. The roll was called. Assemblymember Holden moved.
Ms. Garcia moves. Mr. Mays seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees, there are none. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions, the absences for the day. For illness, Assemblymember Ridley Thomas. Ms. Garcia, you are recognized for your motions.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 118 to allow Speaker Atkins and Assemblymember Chu to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection, the request is granted.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend Assembly Rule 45.5 to allow Assembly Members Brown, Campos, Chow, Chu, Cooley, Dababne, Hernandez, Mathis, and Ting to speak on an adjournment in memory today.
Without objection, the request is granted. Moving to guest introductions. Madam Speaker, you are recognized for your guest introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it is an honor today to recognize a very special guest with us here in the rear of the Assembly Chamber. We're honored to be joined by Ambassador Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez, the Consul General of Mexico to Sacramento. And it is actually a bittersweet introduction because after a very successful and productive 5-year assignment, Ambassador Gonzalez Gutierrez will be leaving Sacramento to begin his new diplomatic post as Consul General in Austin, Texas. To many of us, Ambassador Gonzalez Gutierrez is a very familiar face that we've seen throughout the halls of the Capitol and around Sacramento. We know him through his extensive collaborations with us on issues to help recent immigrants, his participation in legislative hearings and conferences, and his work to organize delegations of travel between California and Mexico. Ambassador Gonzalez Gutierrez was a key organizer of Governor Brown's trade mission to Mexico City, in which many legislators had the opportunity to participate. He was also instrumental in the recent official visit to the state capital of the President of Mexico. His work to promote greater access to quality high school and higher education for students, the creation of the annual Women's Leadership Conference, which focuses on providing health information and work to provide assistance to California Dreamers, have all been enormous contributions to the state of California. He was also instrumental in facilitating President Obama's executive order known as DACA, or DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which helped more than tens of thousands of California immigrant youth brought here by their parents apply for work permits. Joining our ambassador today in the rear of chambers is his spouse, Elena Flores de Gonzalez, and other esteemed consular officials from Mexico. And so, Ambassador, while we will all be sad to see you leave Sacramento, we are extremely grateful for the service that you've given to our state and on behalf of promoting a relationship with Mexico. So on behalf of the members of the Assembly, I want to thank you and congratulate you on your new post. We are going to miss you, and since you'll be in Texas, we actually know how much you are going to miss us. But we wish you and your family all the best.
Mr. Alejo, you are recognized for your announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, on behalf of my colleagues in the Latino Legislative Caucus, it is a great honor to also congratulate Ambassador Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez on his assignment in Austin, Texas. In 2009, Mr. Gonzalez Gutierrez was appointed by the President of Mexico to serve as the Consul General of Mexico in Sacramento. And in September 2011, he was promoted to the rank of ambassador. As member of the Mexican Foreign Service, Mr. Gonzalez Gutierrez has served the Sacramento community with distinction and honor on behalf of the people of Mexico. Ambassador Gonzalez Gutierrez has diligently advocated for diverse community groups in Sacramento and across 24 counties in Northern California. His efforts in the community have included an annual university fair, a women's leadership conference, and a health and legal assistance fair. The ambassador has also worked with Cien Amigos scholarship program, which provides annual financial assistance to college-bound Latino students. Professionally, the ambassador has been an emissary representing Mexico since 1987, and he has served in posts in Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and was the former executive director of the Institute of Mexicans Abroad. During his time in Sacramento, the ambassador has built a strong partnership with the Latino Caucus and has been receptive to our efforts to assist the Latino community and immigrant communities all across California. Ambassador Gonzalez Gutierrez, congratulations on your recent appointment. You have served as a noble emissary for Mexico and with distinction and honor, and congratulations. And we want to wish you and your wonderful wife all the best in your new endeavors in the Lone Star State. Members and staff, we want to invite everyone to attend a reception. We have in honor of Consul General Gonzalez Gutierrez in room 317 Muchas gracias por todo lo que hizo por California. Muchas gracias.
Mr. Chavez, for what purpose do you rise, sir?
I would also like to recognize the ambassador. Many of you may not know this, but back when I had the honor to be the acting secretary of Veteran Affairs, there's a lot of Mexican citizens who serve in the United States military. These men went overseas and fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and when they came back, suffering from the same ailment that U.S. citizens had, suffering from PTSD. Sadly, some of these Marines and soldiers were incarcerated and deported back to Mexico, not given the rights of the VA. So the ambassador worked with me in ensuring that we could establish a relationship to take care of these soldiers and Marines and airmen who served in defense of this country. That wasn't a small thing back when this happened, but it showed his care and giving that he was willing to work within the system to make it better. A lot of you probably don't know this also. When we had the issue of the Marine who took the wrong turn, actually he was out of the Marine Corps. When he took the wrong turn, the ambassador was doing what he could quietly behind the scenes to help us on that effort. He never received the credit for it, but I had met with him a number of times, and he had written updates to me periodically on what was happening. I count him as a friend. I've been over his office a number of times, and I'd just like to say this. Some of you may not even know it. If you actually go to his office and look on his wall, you'll see this big picture of the Latino caucus. And right to the right of it, you'll see another picture of what he proudly says is the Republican Latino caucus of Eric Linder and myself. Ambassador, it's been an honor to know you. You're a great man. And when you go to Texas, don't forget to take care of our veterans. Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Gordon, you are recognized for your announcement and guest introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stanford University is in the heart of my district, and today in the gallery we are joined by a public policy class from Stanford. They're here with their professor, a former member of this state assembly, Joe Nation. Mr. Nation represented Marin County for 3 terms beginning in the year 2000. We welcome him back to the chamber, and we welcome his class from Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming the group from Stanford.
Members, moving to business on the daily file. There is no business on the daily file. Moving to adjournments in memory, as well as additional announcements. Request to adjourn in memory. The following members were granted prior permission to speak on an adjournment in memory. Ms. Brown, you are recognized for your adjournment in memory.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I ask that this body adjourn in memory of a tireless Fresno, California community leader. He's a publisher and an activist, Leslie Les H. Kimber. Mr. Kimber is a founder of the California Advocate newspaper and a former Fresno City Council member. He passed away on Saturday, January the 10th, at the age of 80. Mr. Kimber was born in Boonville, North Carolina, attended Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and George Washington University in Washington, D.C. He graduated with a degree in accounting and business administration. He moved to Fresno in 1966. He was an active and respected businessman and community leader at a local, regional, and national levels. In 1967, Mr. Kimber became the first African-American criminal investigator for Fresno County's Public Defender's Office. Kimber and his wife Pauline founded and published that newspaper, the California Advocate. It garnered numerous awards, including a 1975 American Civil Liberties Union Award in Northern California. His paper was also referred as the Black Press of San Joaquin Valley, and it was a resource for that community. In 1972, Mr. Kimber purchased a printing press and established the Central Valley Printing Company, which was the first African-American owned and operating printing company in San Joaquin Valley. While campaigning for the Fresno City Council, he was endorsed by his longtime friend, Cesar Chavez, who said of Kimber, "We know that in supporting you, the voters of Fresno will be backing a man of proven ability and concern for the poor and working peoples." He was elected to that city council in 1983 and served 2 4-year terms. Les Kimber leaves a widow of 57 years, 4 children, 4 grandchildren. Members, I ask that we adjourn in memory of a great friend and our African-American publisher, Leslie Les Kimber. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Chow, you're recognized for your adjournment in memory.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'm asking that we adjourn in memory today of Mrs. Dolores Wong, a dedicated Chinese-American community activist who passed away on Saturday, November 22nd, 2014, in Alhambra. Mrs. Wong was the wife of Delbert Wong, the first Chinese-American judge appointed by Governor Pat Brown to the LA Municipal Court in 1959, who later served for 20 years in the Superior Court. Judge Wong passed away in 2006 at the age of 85. Born in 1921, the 4th-generation Chinese-American from Northern California was accomplished in her own right. Dolores received a bachelor's degree from the University of California in Berkeley in 1942 and a master's degree in social work from Smith College in 1946. Married in 1948, Judge Wong and Dolores moved to Los Angeles in 1950. Mrs. Wong was a longtime Chinese-American Citizens Alliance LA Lodge member and was involved with the Griffith Park Coordinating Council, Rest Haven Hospital, and Asian Americans for Peace. She also organized the first Chinatown Democratic Club in her home and helped charter the Chinatown Teen Post. Dolores fundraised for the Friends of the Chinatown Library and also served on the advisory boards of the East-West Players and Association of Asian Pacific American Artists. Several of Dolores' most recent work included the dedication of Judge Delbert Wong Square in Chinatown in March 2013 and at the Chinatown Historical Society of Southern California's monthly speakers program on June 2014. Dolores is survived by sons Ken with the UCLA Labor Center, Dwayne and Marshall, and daughter Shelley, and several grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Mr. Cooley, you are recognized at your desk.
Colleagues, Madam Speaker, colleagues, it's my duty, I think, today to rise to honor the memory of Daniel J. Wall. Mr. Wall had a 40-year career in state and local government. He died a week ago of pancreatic cancer, and a very beautiful account of the end of his life, spending time with his family, remembered by family and friends. I knew Dan over the course of my career. He was a remarkable guy, among other things. Believe it or not, in our history of our institution, we've had a bill passed and get signed into law by the governor that had no author. And Dan Wall, in the course of his career, was the guy who cobbled a bill together that solved the problem that when it reached the governor's desk had no author's name on it. A very unusual part of the institution's history, Daniel Wall. And on this day, as we remember our Consul General Carlos Gutierrez, who is going to Texas, it's well to remember that Daniel Wall was a product of Texas. He was born in Texas, but he grew up in San Francisco. He grew up in San Francisco in the era, he studied economics in college. He got his master's in economics while in San Francisco and came out of the era of the Grateful Dead. And those of you that know the Grateful Dead, one of Jerry Garcia's well-liked songs, which was particularly a favorite of Dan Wall, is the song Ripple, which is not about the wine that they used to drink when I was a kid in high school, but it's about sort of the fleeting nature of life, the evanescence of life, that life can be like a ripple that appears in a pond. You haven't thrown a stone, there is no breeze, but a ripple appears and then it's gone. And in this song, and he actually asked that the lyrics be read to remember him, and so I will take permission to read in a moment. The song also talks about the highway of life between the dawn and the sunset as this sort of uncertain path. And itself is, anyone finds their own path. And as you hear his life recounted, this creature of local government, of public service, who made a great mark, very larger than life, loved people, well-known, collaborated the process. I know my colleagues who have served on the local government committee, my colleague from San Luis Obispo, from around the state would know Dan Wall in a very vast reservoir experience, great manner. Because this was a final request, as it were, this song, Ripple, is an interesting one, and it reflects upon all of our careers. Permission to read?
Without objection.
Jerry Garcia, I give you this, was first played in San Francisco in 1970 at the Fillmore West. So it may be that Daniel Wall was there that day. He was a student studying his master's in economics in those days. If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine and my tunes were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my voice come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken. Perhaps they're better left unsung. I don't know, don't really care. Let there be songs to fill the air. Ripple in still water when there is no pebble tossed, nor wind to blow. Reach out your hand if your cup be empty. If your cup is full, may it be again. Let it be known there is a fountain that was not made by the hands of men. There is a road, no simple highway, between the dawn and dark of night. And if you go, no one may follow. That path is for your steps alone. Ripple in still water, when there is no pebble tossed nor wind to blow. You who choose to lead must follow. But if you fall alone. If you should stand, then who's to guide you? If I knew the way, I would take you home. To comment upon the career of Daniel James Wall, he was an advocate for the nation's largest county, Los Angeles County, as I said, appointed to that position in 1998. He served with great distinction. Daniel masterfully discharged his duties. This is how he is remembered. He worked closely with the state legislature and the office of the governor to achieve critical budget and policy-related outcomes of great magnitude. They've directly improved the lives of billions, not an elected official, but touched the lives of billions of residents of LA County as well as our entire state. Public service well done. He was a tremendous local government advocate, and he enjoys great respect in the Capitol community. And in preparation for this the other night, I just swung by Chops after work one evening knowing that I would encounter longtime colleagues who I could sort of tap the fount of their wisdom in Dan Wall stories, and it was an easy matter to do that because of his outsized personality. He continuously ensured that the county's, that is LA County's, priorities were vigorously voiced in Sacramento. And he was, as I say, a tireless advocate. His career included distinguished service as the Deputy Director for Revenue and Taxation and Federal Affairs for CSAC, the California State Association of Counties. His earliest career actually was in the Department of Social Services and in EDD, where he sort of learned the inner workings of state government. He also served Speaker Herb Wesson as his Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, so kind of helping the Speaker's office connect with all levels of California government. And he did serve a stint on the Senate's Finance Committee as a chief consultant. There's a program in state California, the Property Tax Administration Program, for which he was long been viewed as the father, put that together. And he was active locally on the boards of the March of Dimes, the American Heart Association, the Sacramento Philharmonic Orchestra, and the YMCA. So a long and active community career. He enjoyed life to the fullest. He was a guitarist, liked to have his tambourine ready so he could jump in with any band that was playing and participate. Again, that outsized personality. And if he wasn't doing that, he'd be dancing to the music that they supplied. He is survived by his wife of 42 years, Janet Tyler Wall, his children, Aaron Wall Gonsolin, Amy Wall, Laura Emery, Mary Wall, and Thomas Wall, and 4 grandchildren, Tyler and Catherine Hopper, William, and Sienna Emery. His mother survives him, Irene Patricia Wall, and his niece Theodora Staverick. And I just ask that we adjourn in Daniel James Wall's memory today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cooley. Mr. DeBabney, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to adjourn in the memory of Nancy Sweeney, who passed away recently in the San Fernando Valley. Nancy was an influential community leader, well known throughout the San Fernando Valley for her tireless work to improve the community of Reseda. Nancy was a loving wife, daughter, sister, tireless volunteer, and a successful businesswoman. Everyone in the San Fernando Valley that knew her owes her a debt of gratitude for all the great work she did to improve our community. I ask that her name and her memory are adjourned today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeBabney. Mr. Mathis, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is with a heavy heart that I rise and ask that we adjourn in the memory today of one of my constituents and a longtime resident of Big Pine, California, Miss Chloe Ava Miles. Chloe passed away peacefully at her home with her family by her side on January 20th, 2015, at the remarkable age of 104. She is survived by her brother, her son, 5 grandsons, 8 granddaughters, 23 great-grandchildren, and 13 great-great-grandchildren. Chloe was also a caring and giving person who had a passion for reading, baking, sewing, and enjoyed spending time with her family and her friends. But she was also had a giving heart, and she greatly enjoyed volunteering her time and efforts to several community organizations, including the Big Pine Care Center, Bishop Care Center, the Salvation Army, Hospice Thrift Shop, and the Wild Iris, just to name a few. She was a dedicated member of the Big Pine Methodist Church and the Big Pine Methodist Women's Group. And when she passed, it was her wish that instead of flowers, that donations be given towards her church and to the Big Pine Volunteer Fire Department. Chloe loved her family. She loved her friends. She loved her community. She will truly be missed by those who loved and those who had the good fortune to have known her. And I thank the Assembly for adjourning in her memory.
Thank you, Mr. Mathis. Mr. Ting, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I come before you today with a heavy heart as well. We're here to adjourn in memory for Bob Morales. Bob suddenly passed away on January 26, 2015. He was a true champion for all of those of us who didn't have much of a voice at all. He was born in El Salvador, Central America, and came to the U.S. in 1958. He completed his education in San Francisco and joined the U.S. Army. He then went on to join the Metal Polishers and Platers AFL-CIO Union in 1973 until 1973. Where there he moved on to the Teamsters Local 350, where he served for over 20 years. Bob was more than just a local head of a local union here in the Bay Area. He was one of those folks that when you needed something to happen, or when you needed to bring people together on a particular issue, or when you needed to reach across the aisle to the business community and to work together, he was always the first person you called. He had that talent to bring together his colleagues on the labor side, but also to be able to reach out on the business side. And the fact that we've been able to get so much done in the Bay Area, whether it's on minimum wage or whether it's on health care or any critical issue that we faced, it was largely due in part to Bob Morales, and we will miss him.
Thank you, Mr. Ching. Ms. Campos, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in adjournment of Robert Morales of San Francisco, and he was known to his friends as Bob Morales. He passed away last week, January 26th. He served as the Teamsters Joint Council Secretary Treasurer and served over 20 years on the executive board. He also, I think, one of the things that people didn't know about him was that he also served as president on the national level for the Hispanic Caucus. And he also served on the local level for the Hispanic Caucus. And as my colleague previously said, he had this talent of being able to bring people together. As we look at, it's an extraordinary talent to be able to bring people from across the aisle on an issue that may not be your passion, but if it was his passion to make sure that social justice, that workers' rights were addressed, and that people could continue to make a decent living and a decent wage so that they could go back to their homes and be able to provide for their families, Bob Morales would take on that challenge, and he wouldn't stop till he made it right. And I remember as a young woman meeting this bigger-than-life individual, and he had this quiet presence about him. But when he walked into a room, you knew he had arrived. And I remember seeing him and introducing myself to him. And the other talent that he had, that we see that other people have, and not everyone has that talent, is that when he spoke to you, you felt like you were the only person in the room that he was talking to. Whether you were an elected or whether at the time just a staff person, as I was when I first met him. I knew him for 20 years, and I was from San Jose and he was from San Francisco, and I see some other mics up on the floor, which tells me that his ability to be able to reach not only across the aisle, but across California to other people. And that was his talent. And you could pick up the phone and call him and ask him for advice on how to handle a situation that was a little difficult. And in his soft voice and his kind manner, he would force you to think about how you should be solving that problem. And he never knew it, but he actually gave you the answer in his own way. So I ask this chamber to adjourn in memory of Bob, as we called him, Morales.
Thank you, Ms. Campos. Mr. Chu, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I too join our Bay Area colleagues in asking that we adjourn in the memory of Bob Morales. Bob was, to many of us, a good friend. He was someone who dearly loved his family and his community, was very, very influential in many communities, including his immigrant communities, his veteran communities in San Francisco, and as you've heard, around the Bay Area. He was a lion of labor. He fought every day for working men and women, for working families, and to make sure that the lives of his fellow workers were improved in many areas. It is in this hour that the Bay Area community is gathering to remember Bob, and so I think it's fitting that we are adjourning in his memory and ask that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. Mr. Hernandez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chair of the Assembly Committee on Labor and Employment, I too rise to adjourn in memory of Bob Morales. As Director of the Teamsters Solid Waste Division, Bob was instrumental in improving the lives of thousands of workers in the solid waste industry, both through legislative efforts and at the bargaining table. Through his role with the National Hispanic Caucus, the California Teamsters Hispanic Caucus, Bob was especially focused and dedicated to improving the standards and protections for Latino workers across California. I had a chance to work with him a couple of years ago in working on legislation that today is marked as the strongest labor protection for immigrant workers. He was instrumental in that role. And so I know that he leaves a strong legacy of protections for workers across our state and the nation. And he will be remembered as a true labor champion. And I ask you all to please join me and all our colleagues that have risen today to adjourn in memory of Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. All requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Members, if we could maintain your attention, we are moving back to guest introductions. Mr. Chu, you are recognized for your guest introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I'd like to introduce a guest, my first guest actually in this chamber, who was just recognized a few minutes ago in our state Senate. Tomorrow, January 30th, is Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution in the state of California. The fifth such anniversary after this legislative body with AB 1775, signed by Governor Schwarzenegger in 2010, declared the day the first in U.S. history to be named after an Asian American and civil rights icon. My guest today, Ms. Karen Korematsu, is the daughter of Fred Korematsu. For those of you who do not know Fred Korematsu, he was part of a small group of courageous Japanese Americans who resisted the Japanese American internment during World War II. He was arrested in his early 20s for refusing to go to internment camps. He appealed his case to the U.S. Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court in 1944 decided that an entire ethnic community could be incarcerated due to military necessity. Decades later, Mr. Korematsu and a team of young Asian American civil rights attorneys and researchers again challenged the Supreme Court. In 1983, the case was vacated, which led the groundwork for an official apology and reparations to the Japanese American community. Fred's daughter, Karen Korematsu, has continued his legacy with her work at the Civil Rights Institute, the Korematsu Institute, and she was integral to establishing this special day. And I'd ask if you could please join me in thanking and welcoming Karen Korematsu along with the API caucus.
Thank you, members. We have two brief announcements prior to adjournment. Members, a reminder, tomorrow is the last day to submit bill requests to the Office of the Legislative Counsel. Again, tomorrow is the last day to submit bill requests to Leg Counsel. In addition, the Assembly's formal portrait will be taken on Monday, February 2nd. Please be on time. Again, our formal portrait will be taken on Monday. The session schedule is as follows. Friday, January 30th, no floor session. Monday, February 2nd, floor session at noon. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be continued. Seeing and hearing no further business, I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Garcia moves, Ms. Olson seconds, that this House stands adjourned until Monday, February 2nd at noon. Quorum call is lifted.